You're listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Now, it is time to break it down.
Welcome to episode 59 of the Sonny Brown Breakdown. I'm your host, Sonny Brown, and in this episode, I talk to Luke Martin, a jiu-jitsu coach who is currently preparing his athletes for the ADCC World Championships held in Las Vegas. And as we speak in this interview, he's in the middle of the New Wave Jiu-Jitsu camp in Texas. So it was a rare opportunity to speak to someone in the middle of one of the best camps in the world for the biggest competition in Jiu-Jitsu, and I had to take the opportunity. So I was able to catch up with him in emergency broadcast style while he was between training sessions at a coffee shop to make this interview happen. So I was very appreciative of that. Did my best with the audio to try and clean it up, but it was worth the discussion just to get a little bit of an insight for the things that he could give away of what that camp and preparation is like for the World Championships going on this weekend. So I hope you enjoy the interview. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can get a t-shirt at scuffle.com.au or drop us a 5-star review on either Spotify or iTunes. If you'd like to see more on the podcast, it's sunnybrown.net, or follow me on Instagram at Sonny Brown Breakdown, where I am active, and I'll have new episodes of the podcast coming out very shortly. And without further ado, let's go to the podcast. G'day, Luke. How are you today, mate?
Hi, Sonny Brown. How are you going?
I'm awesome, mate. I'm awesome. And you are coming at me live from a coffee house in Texas.
I sure am. Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. You are deep in the trenches of ADCC 2022 preparation. You're over there training at New Wave Gym or Renzo Gracie, Texas. And I thought, this is where we need to hear from you. You and the crew over there while you're preparing for the biggest event to take place next weekend. So
yeah, man.
Take me through, how things have been going so far since you've landed to this point.
Yeah, so thanks for having me back on. I think this is my third time on the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Is that correct?
I think so. And it's going to be getting up there because I tell you what, people were pretty happy with the last conversation we had. I got a lot of positive feedback from that. And so you're on again pretty soon, but I don't think there's going to be any complaints. People like hearing from you.
Well, I love chatting to you and getting to hear back from the people, because I do get some good feedback from these Sonnies. So I often think I'm being quite obnoxious on here, but maybe people enjoy something a little more refreshing than the standard cookie cutter responses you get from these bloody lemons.
So, well, actually, then to kick us off, before we get into the jiu-jitsu, you're having some American coffee, which is notoriously, not up to Australian standards. Now, I'm a man of international roast flavour myself, so I'm no judge. I'm no judge of character, but I know you are. Luke, you're a little bit of a barista yourself, so take me through what the coffee's like there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to do the numbers in my head. I'm not sure if it's my fifth or my sixth time. Well, it's my sixth time coming stateside, and every time the coffee's been horrendous, right? Like absolutely horrendous, and like they think Starbucks is good, and it's just as long as it's hot and caffeinated, and that's all they care about. But generally, what I've found is if you do enough searching, especially we're in 2022 now, Sonny Brown, there's a lot of changes going on. And, the culture's changing where I think the younger people want to have good coffee. They don't want to just have what they were used to as normal rubbish. So there's little pockets of places in throughout, these cities where you can get good coffee. So I remember in Manhattan, it took me a while, but I found a place that it was like 20 blocks from where I actually had to go at Renzo's, but every morning I'd walk over there just to get a coffee from this one place. I'm 3/4 autistic, so once I set myself a routine of that's my place that I'm happy I'm going to, that's it. Like I'm sorted. So when we got into Austin here last time, I got recommended a place just down the road, and I was going there, and it was great. And then this place here we're at, it's called Civil Goat. It's just down the road from the Renzo gym, is on the same road, just down about 10 blocks. And the boys said to come up here, and yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. If I got this back at home, I would be happy. I would go to this shop and take their coffee. So we found a winner, and it's actually a really cool little hipster joint. And they're going to be kind enough to host us for the Sonny Brown Breakdown today. So we're known as regulars here now. We've been coming in twice a day and getting food, and so they're all having a chat to us. But it's actually quite funny. I was just talking to you before off camera about it. They said, "Oh, do you know there's a martial arts instructor who comes in and buys some acai from us in here. Do you guys know him?" And we're thinking, like, could be fucking anybody. Come on. And then they start describing, a man that wears tracksuit pants and he's got a bald head and he doesn't say a lot and he always asks for the same thing. And we started kind of nodding and went, yeah, we know who it is. So yeah, Danaher tends to come down here and get his lunch acai, and then he moves on to his next training session. So we found the right spot.
So you're walking in hallowed footsteps there of the Danaher acai joint.
Well, I didn't know he ate food, so it was interesting for me to hear that he actually consumes things.
Just Soylent Green.
Yeah, I thought he just charged up in a PowerPoint somewhere, but turns out that's not the case. But yeah, look, it's fantastic here, man. Like, so normally, as most people probably know by now, my thing is that I try to come over here. So often I come to the States to train once a year. That's always been the plan. And, obviously the pandemic just fucked all that. We had 2 years stuck at home. We don't need to go through that again. And, so this year I came back in April, and then that was sort of my first trip back, and it was great to get in here into Austin and see the team as it's changed, from DDS to New Wave. And then, a couple of months later, here we are, due to our success at the trials, where we're back here with 2 athletes. Now, I'm actually only here with one of my gentlemen.
That's Josh Suppo Saunders, heavyweight Australian Trials ADCC winner.
Yeah, that's him. So Suppo's here with me, and Jeremy's going to be flying into Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Jeremy had a slightly different strategy where he was going to adjust his time and sleeping at home. He's going to come in a little bit later so he can stay for the full 3 months post ADCC and maybe try and get matches and things. So he had a bit of a different strategy. Our strategy was to get on the floor a couple of weeks beforehand, be well and truly comfortable, which we're both very happy that that's what we've decided to do.
Nice.
So we've been here about 6 days, and it's really only just the last couple of sessions where we've started to feel more, not even probably normal yet, but pretty close to normal. So by the time we spend another week, Vegas it'll just be normalized and we'll be hitting the ground running. So yeah, I mean, it's to be part of what's the biggest ADCC in history.
Yeah.
Like it's all just coming together at the right moment, and we're right here at the pinhead of it, which is pretty insane. I actually pulled John aside yesterday and just said, I really appreciate you having us on board here, because you've got your very close-knit team, and you've allowed, myself, and allowed me to bring in a guy that you guys didn't know. Obviously the guys like Josh, now they've met him, but it was a bit of an unknown for them, and also a competitor for 2 of his competitors, Big Dan and also Gordon. So, everything kind of pointed towards this not happening, and here we are getting phenomenal training, and I couldn't ask for any more. So we're going all right, Sonny. We're doing pretty well. The 2 Aussies.
I'd say so. Now, I think we should recover perhaps the Oceania trials itself, because I realise we've talked about it, of course, just personally after it happened. But of course, beforehand, when we did discuss on the podcast, things were gearing up for it. It was a goal of yours for a long time to get your students to that level, and you made some bold statements, I guess we could say, about your confidence going into that competition. And I think you'd have to be overall pretty happy with those results. So not everyone that you wanted to get up did get up, but I think overall you did pretty well. You did, as a club, take out the team trophy, so you got to be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm satisfied but not happy. That's my overall wrap-up of the trials. So some gyms are happy if they get someone win a gold medal in a grappling industries in the beginner division, right? And that's fine. Everybody has their different measure of success. That's what the epitome of how you'd like your gym to be measured at. That's totally cool. For me, it was like, okay, so we do no-gi grappling. I've talked up I've got this strategy for trying to make the best no-gi grapplers I can in Australia. So to prove that, how do we go about that? Well, it's really got to be the trials, right? I mean, I suppose you could say no-gi worlds, but that's a different thing again. And it really only until recently, they didn't allow proper grappling. And it's really still only proper grappling, when I say proper grappling, within reason, at Brown and Black. So ADCC was kind of like the benchmark. And I think for most people, it probably still is, to tell you the truth. So as you know, trials was our potential coming out party, or was where we were going to look like a bunch of idiots, just making these statements and not being able to follow through. So we We went into trials with, I think, about 10 competitors, which was not small, but not huge. I think Absolute went in with about 5 or some crazy like that, quite a big team representing. We had a competitor in each weight division. We had a couple of girls. We had 3 girls, which was the first time we've had females compete under us for trials. The girls had mixed success, but they're still just sort of getting going, so that's just how it goes. But there was definitely a few of my male competitors that I thought could either get themselves on the podium or that I expected to be on the top of the podium. And there was only really the one surprise. So in the 66 division, we ended up closing out the final. When I say closing out, the guys actually went out there and fought like madmen. But they both Jeremy Skinner and Baby Dave, they went through and submitted everyone in their bracket. And then in the final, Jeremy submitted Dave. So that got us silver and gold in that division. In the 77 division, we had Ethan Thomas, who is, I still stand by, the best black belt in Australia. He fucked up. He went out there, he tore through 2 of the best guys from Asia. A Korean guy who was a previous trials winner and a Japanese guy that was a previous trial. I'm confused. I get confused between them all now, but 2, studs that nobody knew who they were because just
dark horses.
No one knew them. I don't even know if they're dark horses. It was just that we were idiots and didn't know who they were. And that's more of it. I think that's more of it.
Fair enough.
Like one of them had medal twice at trials. Yeah, ridiculous. Anyway, Ethan submits both those guys relatively easily. Then he gets Kenta, who ends up being the eventual winner. And Kenta was a solid grappler. He's won trials before also at 66 last time. And Kenta ends up managing to score on Ethan very late in the match. He gets his back, which is, first of all, to get Ethan's back it's like finding a unicorn. It never happens. Kenta did a fantastic job and Ethan did a fucking terrible job. And it all happened in that one moment. And it was devastating. Because if there was one guy that was our definite, maybe other than the big guy sitting next to me, it was Ethan. I understand that martial arts are a crazy thing, so these things can happen, but that was sad. So that was one that slipped away that we nearly had it in the boat. And look, Ethan would have had some tough matches after that. He would have had to put away Chen. He would have had to put away a couple of others, but, I think it was very doable. What it did was light a fire under Ethan like I've never seen before. He then went on to compete a couple of weekends later. He did Subversion as the main event and he did Boa as the co-main event and he submitted, 2 of the top guys that were also in that weight division. He put them away. The guy who ended up getting silver, he put him away in about 7 minutes with a back strangle. So he showed his quality, but he's just going to have to wait for another couple of years to get on that gold medal spot on the podium. So that was sad. We had the 88 division with Curtis, who's, if anyone knows Curtis, one of our wildcard guys. He doesn't have the pedigree of, say, Bob Frias and some of the guys that have been established, but has the ability to submit everyone in his division. And came out 2 beautiful immediate submissions on his opponents and then ran into Bob Frias, who was the eventual winner, and ended up losing a very close match. He lost by a mount to Bob, which was interesting because to score mount at ADCC, you have to have both knees on the mat. And what Curtis was doing, he was framing the hips. So there was kipping. Bob's holding on, locking his legs, kicking. The knees were never on the mat. So I'm not, Bob's a fantastic champion. It was interesting whether or not that was an actual score, but, all power to Bob. He finds ways to score and he did. So Curtis went out there. We had a couple of our boys at 99. They're still building their game. They're two good brown belts who have come to me from other academies. So we're still working there and just a couple of small mistakes in their matches. And then obviously at heavyweight, we had the big Josh Saunders sitting next to me and he came out. And remember, we talk about this a lot, but he's 2 years into grappling. He went against guys there that were established black belts and not only dealt with the pressure, but took it to everybody. He submitted his first 3 opponents and then had a 12-minute war in the final with Daniel Schwartz, who's the previous trials silver medalist, the kind of premier big man in Australia, really. And they had a good back and forwards match. But Josh dominated the grappling exchanges, sort of countering with front headlock attacks, takedowns, and got himself a ticket to where we are currently. So it was an insane day. It was a good day, but as a coach, I feel I'm a fucking asshole. I always want more. We walk away with 10 gold medals. I'm like, yeah, but there was 2 matches there. We should have another one. And I don't know if that's a good or bad mindset, but maybe it keeps pushing me.
Well, I know there was still some heartbreak there, in those days. It was not all smiles from start to finish. I did see when Ethan lost, it's obviously quite devastating and such. But of course, the level of talent in that field and Kenta himself going on to win, it's a tough out for anyone in a lot of those divisions. Kenta, surprisingly, I've just read, is actually a student of Shinya Aoki. So that kind of grappling pedigree can explain that kind of level. I mean, overall, you may not be satisfied, but I think that does put you in that best no-gi gym in Australia category, I think, quite firmly now, which, how do you feel about that?
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I've been saying that's the goal. I think post-trials, it's something that I can make a pretty strong argument for. At the end of the day, it's not necessarily a measurable quantity because people are going to say, insert gym, A, B, C, whatever, they've done this, they've done that. So and a lot of it is biased. It depends who people like and who people know and who they're friends with and where they've trained. Look, I think if we're talking currently, you have to say that we're making some pretty strong moves to make claim to that as the top academy. And like I said, I'm absolutely not satisfied. And we're focused right now on the Worlds in 1 week. At post Worlds, I'm already thinking, what are we moving to next? How are we progressing the guys forward? What are the next competitions that they need to tick off? There'll be a couple of the boys competing while I'm away. Ethan and Dave are actually going to be competing in there's a local tournament. They're calling the Grappling Nationals. And the reason people are interested in it is because they put up a prize of the winner of the brown and black belt division, and a couple of others get their airfares paid to the no-gi World Championships. So that's appealing for grapplers because obviously flights are expensive. So that's going to be an opportunity for our boys to show out. Unfortunately, Ethan and Dave are going to be in the same division. So we're hoping they meet in the final. That's always the best case scenario when we've got two in the same division. We'll see how that goes. So that's interesting to look at. But yeah, I'm always looking forward. But top gym in Australia, we're right there. If it's not number one, it's number two. I think Lachlan's done some fantastic things with his team at Absolute, and I respect that. And I've always used him and his team as a benchmark for myself, at least a goalpost to aim towards. But yeah, I plan on us pushing right forward and just continuing to win absolutely everything we can. And that all comes down to the day-to-day work. Like, people see the tournaments and they see the big matches, but they don't kind of understand when you peel back what it was that led to that and the work that needs to go into it. Like, Josh sitting next to me, he's at the gym twice a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then he's there doing multiple sessions on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. But there's a lot of time and study. And then outside of the gym time, then there's the recovery and there's the study. So some people think, I do jiu-jitsu, and they go in and do a hobbyist session once or twice a week. It's different with these pros. They're treating it like a career now. And so there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes, and that's the side where I've got to look at and go, we've got to optimize that time, because I look at it, it's not just good enough to get good, it's how good can we get as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm excited. Like, I'm super excited for the Worlds, and then I'm excited for where it leads to. There's no end. It just keeps going. And I'm always, when I was thinking to myself, it's not just good enough to be like, okay, we've got like 5 guys that are really high level. Who are the next guys that I'm looking at coming through, and how do I get them to bump into that next level where they're now legitimate threats to all the local black belts? It doesn't matter that they're a blue belt or purple belt. That's irrelevant. So I'm starting to look at the younger guys in the team and work out who the next ones that have potential to come through, and start to try and groom them to some degree.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's obviously Absolute has been the mainstay for a while now, and also did take out the recent AFBJJ national competition no-gi as well. So I'm sure they're not going anywhere, and still going to be putting runs on the board and staying up there in that top no-gi gym category as well.
AFBJJ, so to win those tournaments, you've got to just have enough money to pay for all the fucking registration fees, don't you?
That could be another rabbit hole to go down.
Don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started. If people want to hear my thoughts on that, I'm welcome. I'm willing to spend the next hour trashing those.
Before we go down there, I was just going to say, I think it is impressive. Having seen you take guys that have come and walked in through your door at the gym and just coach them up to that level from the ground up, perhaps not being in the main location, to just have people traveling through or getting there easily, and just having to, build talent, white belt up and take them to that level, I think is quite impressive. So, having watched that from the outside, very excited to see where that goes, even more so down into the future. And so as we head into, next weekend, ADCC, you're in camp with the Danaher crew. You're in camp with the team who's probably, you know, tipped to take a lot of the divisions, although divisions, again, hotly contested, could go anyone's way. But what is the training like there now? I imagine it's starting to taper down a bit, but what have you taken away so far?
I don't think they're tapering down yet, to tell you the truth. So there's still 2 sessions a day at the pro session. So there's still 2 sessions a day at the pro session, but one's much lighter than the second one. Where Josh and I are going to the second session in the afternoon, which is where there's a lot more live training and heavier drilling. The workload's still pretty heavy. Like, you know, I've been watching Go to War with Satoshi Ishii, who's a gold medalist in judo.
A legend.
Yeah, you would
Pretty
probably
cool.
enjoy. Yeah, he's been on the mat every day, so him and Big Josh have been getting some work in together. He's phenomenal in the standing position. He's built like a fucking bull. Like he looks like a bull. So that's interesting to watch. You know, top of the food chain. From what I understand, he won. It's not just about winning the Olympics. I think he won the All Japan. There's a tournament called All Japan or something like that, which is effectively even harder. It's like tougher than the Olympics. So there's like a judo version of that with the Japanese guys apparently, and yeah, Satoshi took that out. So I mean, he's just about as top level as you get from what I understand.
Yeah, just a warhorse too. I think he's taken up boxing recently. He went into MMA and, you know, fought a who's who through there, and I think he started boxing just recently. Yeah,
it was tough as shit, like tough as shit. Saw him get hit in the head the other day with a heel accidentally, and he kind of like shook his head and just went back to it. And like most of us would have sat it down and had a rest for a round or so, but he's just so tough, it just didn't even slow him down. Yeah, so him and Gordon going to war, and Gordon brought in Kyle, who's Serum or Serm. I always say his surname wrong.
Oh yes, Sermonara.
Yeah,
I think it is the wrestler, the Long Island wrestler.
Yeah. So Gordon brought him over. I mean, he's a pretty good kind of Galval substitute as far as build and style. So I think that was interesting to watch those two. So what I'm trying to say is that the rounds are still pretty heavy. The pace is intense, and they're definitely not like switching off and coasting. I think next week will be a much lighter workload as far as those killer rounds won't be happening as much. It'll be more specific drilling and sort of ticking the engine over, but not necessarily, you know, having the foot to the floor like it has been. But it's very interesting for me, not necessarily as a competitor. I mean, I'm in the training room just as an athlete at the moment, not as a coach.
Sure.
But I'm always looking at it from a coach's perspective of how is John approaching this? Why is he approaching it like that? So this has all been like valuable for me as far as preparing, you know, the team back at home and bringing the experience that John and the high level guys here have. So as I said before, we're very, very lucky and very thankful to the guys for having us in, especially because obviously I've got a good relationship with them. I've known the guys now for many years. I'm not just say ADCC everyone saying, hey guys, can I just come and do a session with you guys? So there's that background built, but there's still, you know, Josh literally has 2 of those guys as competitors potentially. So I would put myself in John's shoes. Would I let a guy come in? I mean, you would have to have a good hard think about it. So yeah, for us to be here and doing what we're doing, it's pretty good. And obviously great for Josh because he's so new in the sport as well. He's getting, not only is he getting like his first view of John and how he approaches the room, but also getting that at the heightened level of prepping for the world.
It's pretty crazy.
Craziness.
And one thing I've noticed you mentioned about, you know, just the way that John is presenting his information and teaching his classes, and there's still things that you're taking away from that you're going to be bringing back. What are some of the things you've noticed this time about how he's doing things?
So it's not, let me think about this.
Sure.
Because I'm also thinking to myself, like, is there anything that I shouldn't be saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
I'm trying to, I would never want the guys to think that anything that was happening in the training room was kind of being broadcast, especially. So I'm trying to also think to myself, like, how can I put this without giving away too much stuff? But as far as the approach, it's the pro session is relatively similar to when I was here in April. So I don't think it's changed too much, but the focus is very much ADCC style. Okay, so rather than normally John would teach to just bring the entire team up with all levels, all parts of the game, as far as submissions and positions and whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. It seems to be very heavily biased towards how do you win an ADCC match. If you put some thought into how most ADCC matches are won, it's not necessarily by showing the team 25 different submissions. It's probably by what's the most likely way you're going to be scored on. You know, you sat down in your ass. How can you scramble to not be scored on from there? So it's like a lot of how to not be beaten is like seems to be a big focus, if that makes sense. Because obviously people get beaten by silly little mistakes and just accepting something they shouldn't have. And you can stop a guy from beating you, then you're going to give yourself such a bigger chance of actually winning the matches. And that's to sort of break it down just into a couple of sentences. I would say that has been like the main focus I've seen. It's quite intense. It's very, like, John's classes are always quite intense, but it's probably more so intense, especially with, you got to remember, like, I'm looking around and there's like 8 guys that are competing next week at the World Championships at the highest level. That's pretty big. Like, I don't know if people appreciate how big it really is. It's a huge thing. If you win ADCC, especially nowadays, that's massive. That might mean you can sell DVDs. It might mean you can sell seminars. It can be life-changing for you as an athlete. Or for some people like Gordon, it's a legacy thing. It's pushing them into this stratosphere of being like legendary in the sport. So it's pretty intense. John's, in his debriefs or when he's breaking down with the team, there's very specific things in relation to winning that ADCC match, rather than just an overall sort of progression of their game. So yeah, it's more subtle things that the average character might not necessarily notice, but I'm noticing the difference. And yeah, it's very interesting. Now, you wouldn't do every day like this, because let's say they're going to have the team go and compete in, you know, the way the guys make their bread and butter in between these big tournaments is all the different other $10,000 tournament here and whatever, and most of the EBI rules are sub-only, or you've got to adjust your game to suit that. You can't just play ADCC style forever. And also, if you play a very heavy ADCC style, from my point of view, you can be a little bit negative. You know, you might not as likely to take a risk in getting a submission and that's, at the end of the day, the reason people love John's team is because they're so submission oriented. So it's interesting watching John, whose always main goal is to teach his students to finish the fight, and then blend that with also, we need to remember, if we just go out there like a madman just trying to submit guys, but we let 4 points be scored upon us, we're never going to win any match. So yeah, it's very interesting seeing that side of things. Does that make sense to you, Sonny, what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I think pretty much in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, it's pretty much whoever gets scored on first statistically is most likely to lose. It's very hard to come back from any kind of points deficit when the person who's in front can then perhaps not coast, but they're not the one who need to take a risk once those points have been scored.
It's just so hard to score. It's so hard to score, particularly at ADCC. I don't know if it's fair to say, but it might be harder to score at ADCC than it is under wrestling rules, because wrestling rules, you've only got to show the guy's back towards the mat, or you've got to turn him over. ADCC, to score a takedown at ADCC, you have to pin the man on his back. You have to put him on his back, and you have to put 75% of his back on the mat for a pass, and for a takedown, you at least have to put his ass on the mat and keep his ass on the mat, okay? So I shouldn't say put him on his back. You can put him on his ass and keep him there. That'll score you a takedown. But good luck doing that to someone who doesn't want that to happen. They'll turn to turtle. And then what are you going to do? Oh, well, just take their back. Fucking good luck taking the back of these guys the way they can defend hooks and then scramble. And then now you are the back standing again, or, you know, the way ADCC works. I can go to turtle for 3 seconds and then I can go back to guard, and now there's no points consumed whatsoever. So it is hard to score. And then you've got to pass guards, and it's not that easy to pass people's guard. And again, you get past the guard, what do? Go to turtle. Like, you start to realize, you know, I've been having some like absolute wars the last couple of days with Oliver Tarza, who's he'll be a 3-time vet once he steps on the mats, you know, in Las Vegas. He's an absolute legend of a guy. Make sure people are following Tarza. He doesn't put out a lot on Instagram, but he's just a fucking really good guy. He's a TriStar guy who ended up moving down to John many years ago, and he's obviously a big part of the team. And then we're having matches where it's so hard to score on each other. It's like, and it's so tactic based. And as you get tired, you've got to think to yourself, okay, if I come back to my feet here, I'm more likely to give up a takedown. And now points are on, I can't pull because it's going to be a negative. And there's so many considerations. And this is why, if you understand ADCC rules, I'm convinced now that ADCC is maybe one of the best rule sets.
Yeah.
Like, I always used to think sub-only, but then we see a lot in sub-only of guys just fucking doing nothing. I mean, we see a guy just doesn't want to get submitted, he just plays tight, and that's not really how that was designed to be. You know, the idea of sub-only was, here's no points, you don't have to worry about it, just go at it, boys. And then some people using that as an opportunity to go, okay, well, I know the match lasts this long, and I'll just get there and not get submitted, and then we'll work out whoever we're going to, let's say it's an EBI overtime, maybe now I'll just game the EBI overtime, or whatever. So and again, I'm not against EBI. I'm just saying ADCC, it breeds a pretty strong type of grappler. Because if you can get a sub, fantastic. And you've got your first 5 minutes to do that with no points. So in the first 5 minutes, you can play a lot more free. Then you get to the points period. Now you've got to be careful. And you're not allowed to just sit guard. So you have to know what you're doing in a standing position. And, from a guy who used to be probably, you would call me a guard puller, I've realised you have to have more in your game. And it makes you a better grappler when you have to be able to do standing position. So I know a lot of guys don't want to hear that, but it's actually really fun as well to add new components. So I think ADCC is one of the better rule sets to prepare a grappler for, because you're going to give him a pretty well-rounded skill set.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I've found it one of the more entertaining, or at least the percentage of entertaining matches seems to be more than other rule sets. You can still get some pretty long, drawn out, shoving affairs and game of mercy going on and whatnot. So it's not completely immune, but on the whole, I find it's definitely one of the more entertaining ones. And I think the crowds and the the hype behind it, it's not only just for the legacy and the the meaning that this competition has, but the actual quality of matches that you see there as well.
I would love to run more ADC style tournaments back at home, just for your average grappling. All the tournaments are kind of run under IBJJF rules. What the problem is, it's a very tricky rule set as far as judging and refereeing. And you need a bunch of guys who are skilled in that to be able to make the rule set work properly. And it's like, how many referees do we have in Australia, or judges that could actually do it properly? Do we even have enough to run tournaments? That's the tricky thing from my point of view. But I'd love to be putting on more ADCC style tournaments, because I think there's a lot of people that could start to really enjoy it once they understand what's going on.
Let's get Paige and George. Get him in the mix.
Oh, let's not do that. George has got enough on his plate.
He certainly is a very busy man. So when now you are, you're there coaching Josh on the mat, and of course, John Danaher is running the sessions. How does your role of coach then, do you just take a step back, Josh, listen to John, or what's your kind of way to work between that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I've got absolutely no problems in stepping back when required, right? So what you got to remember is, this is not my training room, and we came here to work with these guys. So I'm not, as far as the session goes, it's all John. And then post session, if I had a chance to I'm training at the same time, but if I had a chance to see some of Josh's rounds, especially with being a bit jet lagged, like I might sit out a round where I normally don't, but like, as you know, with jet lag, like sometimes you just can't, your body can't go anymore. So let's say I'm sitting around and I'll watch him. And like yesterday, there was just a couple of small details I wanted to chat with him afterwards about, and we kind of fine-tuned some things. So I'm not doing any direct coaching. I'm not standing up in the middle of the class and going, okay, thanks, John. All right, now, Josh, are you going to go there and do 20 arm bars? Like, no, I'm just minding my matters and keeping nice and quiet. And obviously we're living together and traveling to do all the things. So we're doing plenty of just chat in the car about tactics and strategy and how sessions went. And yeah, so we're kind of doing it in a different way that we would normally, whereas where I'm teaching the session, he's kind of following. But look, if I didn't trust John's advice at this stage, I've made an incorrect decision in bringing us here. Yeah, so if I'm going to second guess that, I mean, what am I doing?
Yeah, I think that's fair play. Fair play there.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, what's the chances though now of him pulling out Gordon in the first round? That's got to be a tough one, with a strong possibility of it happening, right?
Yeah. So for people that don't understand ADCC, generally or historically, what happens is they seed the competitors, 16 in each division, and they tend to seed the Australasian Oceanic trials at 16 just automatically. Like, it was just, those guys are the bottom of the rung. Whether or not the competitors actually were good or not is irrelevant. It was just, that's where you guys fit at 16. You've got the least amount of people in your trials, blah, 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 whatever. And then they seed right up to 1. So 1 being the previous champion if he was coming back. And if the previous champ wasn't coming back, they would seed another athlete at 1. Obviously, Gordon is the premier grappler in the world. They're going to seed him at number 1. So the big question on everyone's lips who's close to the Sydney West team is, where do they seed Josh? Now, you might automatically just go, well, he's at 16, but it's not necessarily the case. There's a couple of trials winners who pulled out, and they slotted in other guys who didn't win trials and hadn't really done much. So there's that. There's a couple of spots like that there. I'm pretty sure there's a Finnish guy who won the heavyweight European trials, who has been very vocal that calling Gordon out and wanting Gordon first round. I don't know whether that's an interesting strategy. I don't know whether that even means anything. Like, is that something Mo looks at and goes, so Mo Jassim, for those listening, he's the man who runs ADCC. He's the man we all need to thank for the fact that it's so good. I don't know if Mo's going to look at that. I don't know if Gordon says to Mo, I'd like to smoke that dude. Who knows? I don't know. It seems, as a coach, right, every coach wants to say to himself, oh, it doesn't matter, we'll just kill everyone. Yeah, but when you're talking about Gordon, it's a different thing. And it's not MMA where it's like, well, maybe he just shuts his eyes and swings an overhead right and knocks him out. It doesn't work like that in grappling. You know, as fantastic as Josh is, right now in his career, to compare him directly to Gordon and say, oh, he's going to go in there and smash the dude. That's just, I still live in reality, and I think it's important to live in reality. There's a difference between pumping yourself up and being realistic. So if we get that match, is Josh going to go out there and give it full noise and do everything he can? Absolutely. He's not going to go out there and lay down and just say, just put me away, Gordon. But is that the best first match for us that we would like? Not really. Is there some other ones that we're interested in? Absolutely. We'd be very excited about a match with Philippe Pena.
Big names.
And remember, these are big names. Don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting those guys. I'm just saying, for me as the coach, if we get anyone's name other than Gordon first round, I'm pretty happy with that. If we get Philippe Pena, if we get Nicky Rod, who potentially could be on the other side of the draw, they're all pretty exciting matches for Big Josh. Now, again, super tough. Like, we're talking about very established competitors, but you know, we've seen this in with athletes before. There's always a time in an athlete's career when no one knows who they are, and they're always counted out until they finally prove themselves. And you're going to see good things to come from this guy. And you know, he can go out there and make some crazy. We've seen it before. You know, Lachlan's always a perfect example at the ADCC absolute division when he submitted 3 guys in a row. So we shouldn't discredit too many people too much, and I think we can cause some damage. I'd love to get anyone other than Gordon. What you've also got to consider is Gordon's going to have his teammate in the second round. The way ADCC does it is if you have 2 teammates in the same division, no matter what, they meet each other in the second round to stop things happening where people are closing out finals. So either way, Big Dan and Gordon are going to meet in the second round. So, you know, it could end up happening that out of the 3 of these guys training together in the training room, they have each other in the first and second round. It could happen like that where we get Gordon and then Gordon gets Dan. So who knows? But I'm not putting too much fret or worry into that, to tell you the truth. We're prepared for, Josh has got a prepared game for, you know, whoever he gets. And the brackets will come out on Friday night. So the exciting thing is they don't put them, some people are like, oh, you should be able to put out the brackets weeks in advance so we can prepare and people can get excited. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's kind of just like a bunch of super fights, right? And the beauty of a tournament is you don't know who you've got till it used to be on game day. You know, you'd rock up on game day and go, okay, yep, this is who I've got. So there's some beauty to that. So Friday night, there's going to be Mo's got a huge thing organised. They're going to be bringing people out on stage and it's going to be insane. On Friday night, we'll find out. Friday night will probably be a late night for me because, you know, we've got Jeremy and we've got Josh. So once we find out who their first opponents are, I'll be spending a substantial amount of time studying matches and just finding things that I need to know about their first round opponents. And obviously, once we see how the draw is, then looking at least the 8 athletes on their side of the bracket. So we know, okay, well, round 2 when it comes up, who is it like or who could it be? So I need to know how they like to pass, what they like to do. So Friday night's going to be busy for me. Jeremy's an absolute freak. Jeremy has already pretty much studied all 15 of his opponents.
Yeah, he said that when I spoke to him. It's really stood out. I really liked it that he's like, oh yeah, I've got game plans for everyone already. I'm good.
Oh yeah, and he's not even joking. He would have a notepad with notes on every single one of them. He probably knows what they do as well as they do. Yeah, Jeremy's a fantastic student in that regard, and so I don't have to stress as much because I'm likely to go to Jeremy and say, oh, this guy you've got likes to do this, and Jeremy will have had that written down 2 months ago. So, but Big Josh, he likes to not let the other guys sort of get into his head and worries about himself, and then I'll do that heavy lifting for him. So, yeah, it's going to be a very fun weekend next week. We fly into Vegas on Monday. So today's Saturday over here. We fly into Vegas on Monday. So we'll train today, we'll train tomorrow, we'll fly in on Monday. We'll probably lose a day by the time all that travel happens. We may not get, you know, training in on that day, which is not the end of the world. And then that week, then we go into that mode of lighter training, more specific drilling, keeping the mind sharp, keeping the bodies fresh. A lot of the boys have to keep their weight down as well, because the way it works at ADCC is you have to make weight on Friday morning. There's a time zone you have to make weight, then a time period. And I'd like to ask Mo about this. I'm pretty sure the reason they do it is so they can see if the athletes, if they've got a guy coming in 10 kilos heavy on a Friday, they can organise an alternate rather than getting to Saturday morning and not being able to having a part of the bracket that disappears. So what they do is they make everybody weigh in Friday morning. You have to make weight. They do give you a 1 kilo allowance. So I think what they do with that is they're like, okay, we can see you can make the weight. So that's Friday morning. Then Saturday morning, which is comp day, first day of the comp, you have to make weight again. Then you compete. And assuming you make to day 2, you have to make weight again on the Sunday. So if you're a guy who's moving substantial weight, you got to be careful. You're going to do 3 big weight cuts with, minimal time between the cut and you going on the mat. So it's very interesting, all the moving parts of ADCC. And there's a lot of the athletes who are, having a diet and they're doing hard work like the MMA guys do, but they've got to make it over and over and they've got to do it without that 24-hour period of rehydration. So there's a lot of moving parts to all this, and it's like who can deal with all that pressure and on the body and still go out there and execute like they need to.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this all goes down. And I mean, looking at the rankings for Josh, there was these Flow Power rankings that I saw that had a bunch of people that Josh was ahead of. So hopefully that plays into it. Although I don't know if that was any kind of weight put into it or just put together by someone on the pay list.
Yeah, I think it's just a fun thing they put together. That if you look at it, it was based off match time, submissions, blah blah blah, but you got good quality grapplers who just ran into a guy who was hard to submit, and then that just fucked his power ranking because the match timing on the app. Like, there's some pretty solid grapplers that were down the bottom of that list there. So I'm not convinced that Mo Jassim is looking at the Flow Power rankings. I think that's just a fun thing from a media perspective to get the fans interested in talking, and that's great. Like, the fact that our sport even has that nowadays is cool. For a long time, nobody even would have known who anyone was, let alone talking about where they want to rank them. But I think Mo has a pretty good idea where he sees everybody fitting in, and he's seen who's been busy lately and what they've done. And I think if he doesn't know anything about you, well, you're probably going to be pretty low. I mean, he said something crazy on one of those live streams the other day, something like, I might just do Gordon and Penn first round. Now, I don't know if that was just a throwaway comment, but I mean, imagine he does that. Imagine he goes, look, instead of taking the potential that this doesn't happen, what if I just make it happen? I mean, that's just craziness. So I'm excited.
That would be pretty crazy, considering everything that went down.
And then, we've been talking about Josh there, but let's not forget, we've got Jeremy in the 66 division. That 66 division's pretty stacked. It's
stacked.
Yeah, it's stacked. And you got Jeremy, who I truly believe, if given the opportunity, could submit anyone in that division. And I'm not saying that as a biased coach perspective. I'm just saying it because I know his skill set. And like I said, people have got to move past the whole putting everyone else on a pedestal and not realizing how good the Australian athletes actually are. And, if these guys give Jeremy a sniff of the submission, he's a true submission threat in that division. Whereas some of the other guys are probably more positional based and looking to win a takedown battle and position from there and pin a guy. Even though Jeremy has very good positional game, you're going to see him trying to put matches away. And don't be surprised if Jeremy goes out there and submits some people that people think he shouldn't or wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, very much so. And I guess a big thing too at this level is guys can also, if they get that signature win over a bigger name or well-established name, let's say, that can really catapult them as well. They're really all it takes, and we've seen that in the past too. Is that something that plays into, if you just like to see one of your guys get on, just get a signature win or a big name under, as a notch on the belt?
It's interesting. I don't actually think that far ahead, and that sounds odd. I don't picture even the feeling of getting a win with one of the gentlemen in a match. I haven't even thought about it until you just said it to me. I just worry about the next rung on the ladder that I'm moving forward. So, and that might sound short-sighted, but even though, then I said to you, I'm preparing for rounds 2 and 3, I haven't actually thought about that moment of, oh, fuck, you just, Josh submits, insert big name grappler, whatever, because I'm not convinced that that does me any good, positive or negative. So I kind of don't put any juice into that. I look at what can I do to make that happen, and I'm obviously like obsessing about that every moment. And that's like something that I can enjoy that when it happens, and then I deserve it. Like I don't deserve it right now because it's not something I've earned yet. Does that sort of make sense? So
Yeah.
I'm not putting myself in that mindset of what it might be like, but I could, now that you mention it, I mean, I can imagine like the feeling of when each of those guys won their trials. That was a pretty good feeling. It was slightly bittersweet with Jeremy because obviously he had to beat one of our other boys to do that. But let's say with Josh, like it was nothing but positivity and like a pretty fucking good feeling. I imagine them going out there and getting their first win, particularly by submission, is going to probably be a similar feeling. And, you know, it kind of brings a smile to my face thinking about it. But I'm not even looking that far ahead right now as far as worrying about that. I'm just get all the ducks in a row to us to get to that point. And then I feel like then it's a matter of let's put the cards down and fucking play them, you know, like, and let's see how it goes. And that's the beauty of this. Like, what's going to result in that win there is work that's been done for the last year or two. It's nothing that I do right now, or this is all just small adjustments and fine tuning. And this is, again, it comes back to that thing people don't see. They don't see these guys every fucking day when they're beat up and tired or whatever, like going in the gym and working and just sticking at something doggedly that's very difficult for such long periods of time. So all of that is what leads to this, not positive mindset thinking about winning that match. But man, one of them goes out there and Jeremy submits AJ Agazam and snaps his leg in half, that'll make me pretty happy. You know, I don't want people to get hurt, but you know what I'm saying. AJ would not have to win anything. So if AJ's getting beaten by a leg lock, it's because his leg's snapped in half. Yeah. But that could be a matchup that could happen.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's just something we certainly have seen multiple times in the past that guys can just get that signature win, I call it, and then it's off to the races from there. So when's Jeremy joining you guys?
Jeremy flies in Wednesday. Yeah, so we'll meet him in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Jeremy's coming in later. He's going to adjust all his sleeping back at home. He can get away with it where he's going to expose himself to bright light in the times that he needs to, be in dark when he needs to, adjust his training. So he's already, he's already starting to adjust that now. He's telling me last night.
Yep.
He'll still be training back at home. The team's still back at home. It's just Josh and I that are away. So they've been still getting all the the required work in. Obviously, Jeremy's needing to bring his weight down because him and Baby Dave cut a pretty substantial amount of weight for the trials. But it was only on the day we had to do it, and then they were the last division that was going to go on. So they only had to make weight once. So we could get away with their body weight being higher coming into that. And they moved approximately, Jeremy did a bit less than Baby, but on the day they both, if we go kind of from a week before when they weighed in, they're probably at least 6 kilos above their weight division coming into the week. And, but they both felt great on the day once they rehydrated and got everything back on board. Jeremy decided that he didn't want to be coming in from such a high body weight because of the multiple weigh-ins, and he didn't want to be doing big weight cuts. So Jeremy's been reducing. I mean, he looks like just muscle and bone right now. Like these guys, when you see him down at 66, you're going to see it on during the week when you see photos of these guys. There's not much on them. Like Gary Tonan's the same. Gary's bringing himself right down also. Those guys have got a tougher time of it than the heavyweight who's here, drinking coffee and eating whatever he wants. And I don't think people realize how hard, like these guys that are doing the 66 division, most of them are not walking around at 66 kilos. They're having to do some serious work, and they're changing like their body to get down closer to this so they can make those multiple weigh-ins. So Jeremy's going to get in on the Wednesday, and so with him, it's not just the training. We've also got to consider the weight cut, traveling on the plane, you hold fluid. Like I'm convinced the plane is fucked for weight cutting.
Yeah.
I really am. After a lot of travel over the years, you tend to hold water and it takes a few days to get it back out, and then your wake, sleep times are all screwed up. So yeah, hopefully by Friday, Jeremy's, feeling good, and we start from there. But yeah, it's a very different outlook. I've got a bookends, between the 66 and the heavyweight. Like their approaches and their fight week looks very different to each other.
Yeah, very much so. It is the two extremes, or the bookends, as you say. It's two very different looks across the board, really.
We've got 66. You've got Jeremy, who's one of the smallest athletes as far as weight's concerned, and you got Josh, who their division is just plus 99, and he's one of the largest athletes in the division. we were in the change room showering up yesterday after training, and Gordon walks in, and I'm fucking waiting. There's like a line at Roka. It's the best facility you've ever seen. It's fucking beautiful, but there's one shower. Because the guy who set it up, he just set it up as his own gym. Just some dude who has a awesome sunglass company, and he just set up this gym within his warehouse, and it's it's phenomenal. Like it's everything you could ever need. It's got a huge mat space, and obviously the team's lucky enough that they just let him use it. Anyway, but there's one shower. So at the end of training, there's like this line. It's like you're waiting. And I'm standing there, and Gordon walks in, and I'm like, I said, you can go next. Like, I can't cutting line in front, like not let Gordon go first. So I'm like, all right, you can have next, Gordon. He's like, all right. And he goes. And then Gary wanders in. I'm like, all right, Gary, you got next. So I'm fucking standing there for like an hour waiting to have a shower. But Gordon stands there next to Josh, and he looks at him. Josh and Gordon have both got their shirts off. And Gordon goes, fuck, I wish I was a real heavyweight. And we sort of all smile at each other. And there's, Gordon is a fucking monster. But when you see the difference between like what you would call a real heavyweight, Josh, and Gordon, there's still like nearly 20 kilos of lean muscle, which is a lot, and bone, and you're talking about a bigger human. So that's definitely something that's in our favour with Josh, and that has been his whole career, is that he's a huge, like legitimate heavyweight, but he can move like someone that's more like a 99 kilo guy. So it's very fascinating as Josh continues to progress his overall skill set and just his experience, where he could potentially go from there.
Yeah, right. So is that, you're saying Josh has about 20 kilograms even on Gordon? Is that what you're saying there?
Maybe it's closer to 15, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, Gordon is just, there's absolutely no fat on him. You got to remember though, Gordon still came up from like 170, when he was younger.
Yeah. I remember those videos of him at Purple Belt as a different human being.
Yeah. He's a bit of an enigma. He's got a certain air to him as he moves around the room. He's a pretty special individual, that guy. Very, very quiet. This is something a lot of people wouldn't know going off his social media presence. He's actually doesn't say a lot, especially in the training room. Doesn't say, he's pretty quiet. Just sits there. Like his online presence is totally different to what his real life presence is like. It's really interesting.
I have heard people say, the online presence, the online persona different than the real life. Although I am kind of the mind now that so much of the world is lived online that it's kind of more difficult to separate the two. When, that a lot of people's interactions and communications are solely online now. That, if you put anyone in the privacy of their own home, I'm sure they're different to how they might be at work or school or the gym or something like that. And I think that the online part is just part of that, I guess.
No, here's the thing. This is what people need to fucking realise. Here's some advice for all the fucking youngins listening. Online is not real life. It's not real life. It's not, the way people are online is not who they are for most people. It's a curated version of who they would like to be. Some of them realise it to the extreme where they're like, oh, I can actually just be whatever I want. I could be obnoxious. I could be outgoing when I'm not. I could be whatever. Like, that's not who people are. Like, you see people's Instagrams, and like you see with jiu-jitsu, right? You look at people's jiu-jitsu, people's Instagrams, and you could think someone is much better than he actually is just based on his Instagram. You're like, geez, look at those moves he did, and look, oh, there's a gold medal. But the guy fucking sucks. Like, Instagram is not real life. Most people's online persona is not real life. It's a totally separate thing. It's something that I'm realizing more and more. Like, I was never interested in doing social media. And then I've realized, wait a sec, this is actually where most people, like you just said, they live their life mainly online. If I don't have a presence there, I'm probably doing myself some type of disservice. So, but still, because there'd be things where I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to put that on there because I don't really, and then I'm like, wait a sec. They don't care about that. They just want to watch shit, and they just want content, and they want whatever. And I'm like, Jeremy and I've talked about this a fair bit. We look at all these guys who are complete fucking lemons putting all this content out, and people think they're great. And here we are trying to be stoic and like, oh no, we won't put out this thing. And I'm like, wait a sec, you've actually just got to get on board with it. So, it's like fighting against the tide. You can fucking go with it, or you can just, fight against it. And but people still need to remember what people's persona or what you think their perceived abilities or ideas are online is not, most of the time, is not who they are. And now, just go on and believe the things he says. I'm sure he does. But I'm just saying, in real life, he's nowhere near as bombastic and crazy as it comes across online. And the other thing is, he's gamed it perfectly. His online persona is why he's probably one of the reasons why he's a millionaire. Like as a young man. I absolutely can't hate on it, but it's very interesting. he's gamed it perfectly.
Yeah, I certainly from the marketing perspective is something that you cannot overlook in any endeavor, whether certainly business, sport, performance, promotion. It's just crucial to everything. I guess it's a case of I always say that everyone can look good on pads for an Instagram demo or whatnot. You can train someone up with a little 15-second combination on pads to look pretty slick in a pretty short amount of time, but it doesn't really tell the full story of someone's complete skill set.
It's like people don't have the ability to actually cipher through the bullshit. It's like they're just going off. Like you look at all these girls online, and other girls look at them like, "Oh, I wish I was there," and you don't even know. Like none of that's absolutely nothing that girl puts on her Instagram is real. It's not. She might as well just be a caricature of it. It's not even a real person. I think that's an interesting part of our current society is where we're learning to deal with this thing that's just exploded in front of us, and people are realizing they can make. Anyway, this is not jiu-jitsu talk. People don't want to hear me talk about fucking society and Instagram. Let's talk about jiu-jitsu, Sonny. We've got the World Championships coming up in a week.
I thought I'd crack the stoic, jiu-jitsu character of leg lock Luke Martin there for a second, but he retreats.
Yeah, nice try, Sonny. Nice try. You nearly got me.
But yeah, very much so. It's, that promotion side of things, which we have seen more with ADCC. It's crazy to see just how many people are even aware of it. I would say that every person doing jiu-jitsu is aware that ADCC is going on next weekend, whereas it was only a couple of years ago where that just wasn't the case. I'm not going to give a percentage or whatnot, but it's certainly just not everyone knew or cared that it was going on.
You couldn't even watch it, Sonny. You couldn't even watch it.
Yeah.
I did trials in 2011, and I didn't even get to watch the Worlds that year because I couldn't even watch it. It was like I couldn't even tell you where it was or what it was. I was trialing to go into this tournament, but I knew nothing. It was just so poorly done. And look, after I just gave Instagram a hammering online and the media and the way it's been pushed from there, that's definitely assisted in being able to blow these sort of things up. So flow grappling has been a huge part of our sport because we now have a media outlet actually covering the athletes. So, it's not all bad, but yeah, the exposure just in, say, 10 years is insane. And look, I think grappling's only going to keep becoming more popular, and hopefully this just keeps going. I mean, this is going to be crazy. Like the way Mo's done this. Now, here's my only fear. Mo's talking about not doing the next ADCC. He's saying, I'm out. I'm just going to do the Opens. I'm not going to do the World, blah, blah, blah. I hope he comes back.
Well, it is supposed to be a different person every year, kind of. It is supposed to move around a bit,
Well, he's done a couple of years now because he did such a good job, and I think everyone would be happy if he continued with it. So he's got a real passion. He's also putting his own money into this as well. That's what other people don't realise. So if you had me running it, I've got no fucking money. I'd be no good to let's spend 50K on pyrotechnics because the money's not there, whereas Mo can go, yep, I'm going to throw it in, just putting money into this off his own back as well, and it's going to be crazy. And we might hope this doesn't happen, but maybe we're going to witness the actual pinnacle, and from there it kind of comes down a little. I don't know. The quality of grappling won't, but will the event and the way it's being marketed, and I mean, he was talking about the way they sold tickets to that Thomas and Mack Center. I think even the Thomas and Mack Center, which is a big basketball court arena in Vegas where it's going to be run, they called him on the day that ticket sales opened. After 40 minutes, he had all these missed calls. They said after 40 minutes, we sold 5,000 tickets. I said, do you understand how impressive that is? He's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, this thing's huge and there's a thirst for it. So the feeling of going into that arena as an athlete must be phenomenal, but maybe second place to that is going as a coach because you're actually part of the gears, which is pretty cool. I would love to be there as an athlete personally because I'm still, I suppose, an athlete at heart. But second best to that is going in as a coach, and I'm pretty excited to make that walk with both of my guys when their names are called. And I think it's going to be the Pride lady. What's her name, Sonny? You'd know her name.
Leanne Hart.
I'm pretty sure she's going to be doing the day one, calls and having her call the guys' names and
that's amazing.
And walk out is going to be. I think it's going to be pretty special. And remember, both our guys are going to be standing in front of probably a pretty high quality opponent. I mean, if I run that moment through my mind, that's exciting for me.
Yeah, I think any old school MMA fan, would be overjoyed to hear their names read by her. So, I don't know if Josh has even watched any of the old Prides, but, maybe.
He gets the question all the time. Everyone that sees him, they're like, you're going to fight MMA. You're like, you're really good at grappling. You're absolutely huge. You're going to fight. And he doesn't actually sort of care. He likes watching MMA, but he doesn't have any intention of fighting. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, imagine if we teach this guy to do some punching.
You know, that heavyweight division, you could make an impact.
And this is the good thing with our sport now. Often grapplers had to go to MMA to make some money. Nowadays, it's becoming a point where you could potentially, obviously there's only a small group doing it, but you could potentially make a career as an athlete. So they don't have to go through all that head trauma. And Josh is a clever guy, so he appreciates that a bunch of head trauma is not ideal. He played a lot of football. You know, he's been around that before. So I think, especially at heavyweight, you probably experience about the most amount of head trauma that you can in MMA. So I think he's maybe smart enough to realise that if he can do it in grappling, that's probably a much better prospect. But yeah, people just, it's like they can't help themselves. They're like, I fucking want to see that gorilla go in the cage and do something.
It's always going to be the question. So look, I think at around about this time next week, 7 days from now, we'll be a few hours off the start. First round.
We will be, yeah. What's the current time? So, so 10 a.m. is when the first round's going to start. The heavyweights will be up first. Like I said, we're going to be, it's going to be 1 versus 16 or 2 versus 15 or whatever it works out to be. So we're going to be on, you're right. Around now, we'll be having Josh getting warm and mentally sharp. And 7 days from now, I'll be just as relaxed, but I'll be slightly heightened. Sonny.
Just obviously struggling maybe to find a good coffee in Vegas.
Man, I'm worried about that. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because Vegas is a different beast again. I'm not sure, but you now got me stressed about that more than the matches actually.
Well, let's wrap things up then. I'll leave you to start Googling coffee huts in Las Vegas, see if you can find any.
I need to get onto the locals.
Luke, thanks so much again for the chat. Going to be having a chat with Josh when he gets back, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again in the future because, mate, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Sonny, and thank you to everyone for listening. I appreciate all the responses I get back from people. Hope I wasn't too obnoxious today. I think I was pretty relaxed, and we're just focusing on game day now. So thanks for the chat, Sonny. You're a legend.
No worries. And it was a more relaxed chat. You know, this is an in the trenches emergency broadcast episode just to get mid camp.
This is
as the clock ticks down to game day. So appreciate you taking the time. And the Instagram, if people want to follow you, you are now posting some more stuff than usual these days. Just getting yourself out there a bit more. It's Aussie Leg Lock Luke.
That's the one. Like I've said to you before, there's Leg Lock Luke out there.
Horse racing, mate.
He's a fucking horse guy. But anyway, Aussie Leg Lock Luke is. Follow me on Instagram, guys.
Mate, pleasure to chat to you again. You take care.
See you, Sonny. You're a good man.
Cheers, mate.
You have been listening to the Sonny Brown Breakdown. Until next time, you can visit sonnybrown.net to find out more ways to break it down.